Okay, and welcome to EV Unplugged, the YouTube channel for you for news, reviews, and how to choose for the over 40s. So, last Friday, I went down to the Excel Centre in London and I attended the Everything Electric show. Within that show, there was plenty of new EVs to look at, test drive, new charging units, new home electric solar panel solutions, you name it. If it was electric, it was there. It was a fantastic day. What I did manage to do that day was sit in on one of their debates, one of their discussions around EV cars. And it is about charging anxiety and I guess linked to that range anxiety as well. People can't charge, then they get anxious about the range of their vehicles. So, we're going to have a quick look at part of that discussion and some of the topics that were picked out as being potential issues to convince people that EV cars are for them. So, let's have a look at it and then we can pick it apart and discuss how the things raised could affect you, me, and potential other new buyers.
Brilliant. Well, hello. Good afternoon, all. Welcome to the third and final day of Everything Electric London. I hope you're well. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I hope you've learned and been inspired and all that stuff. I have. I had a lovely time. We're doing charging for the next 30 minutes. We're talking about charging. We're talking about what still needs to happen to make electric vehicles straightforward for absolutely everyone to use and live with. No offense to my panelists, but I wish we didn't have to do this still. I sort of can't wait for the day that this panel is no longer on the schedule for these shows, because that will mean that we've just cracked it. Imagine you went to like a petrol car show and there was a panel about filling up. Oh, that's weird. Perfectly straightforward. We'll get there, but we're not there. So charging anxiety. Who still has reason to feel anxious about charging an electric car? What are the scenarios where it's still not quite right for you? And also, what think that they should have anxiety about charging, but actually it might be fine. It might be fine. I think we'll talk about that a little bit as well. There are certainly other proportion of people to whom electric cars aren't suited. Some of them, it might actually suit them. They just haven't found the right solution yet, and we're here to help them find it. That was the introduction of a man who's been talking into a microphone for 3 days. It really showed that felt just then. Okay, I'll start with you, and then anyone else can jump in. Not everyone is ready to own an electric vehicle at this point in time. We're absolutely open about that, a fully charged. We don't suggest that everyone goes and buys an EV tomorrow because it's not suited for everyone just yet. But actually, generally speaking, it's not owning and driving an electric vehicle that people aren't ready for. It is charging it. Would you agree that this is sort of the barrier? It's the funnel and the thing that is dictating what proportion of the population could buy an EV tomorrow?
100%. I think, there's a lot of people who don't have a swimming pool in their back garden because they can't afford to put a swimming pool in their back garden, therefore they don't have one. A lot of people may not have a driveway to put a charger onto it or cannot afford to have a charger put onto their driveway. So for me personally, I have driveway, I have a charger. It's not installed because just the cost of the cabling is going to cost me £500 and I rent. So it's a really big financial commitment for me to make for something I'm not even going to take away with me because I'm not going to pull the cable out. I might disconnect the charger. So I'm reliant on public charging. So yeah, for me, it's not there. It's not there yet. It is so much better than it was 3 years ago.
Okay, so what Kate picked up on there is a really important fact. And we know that EVs are not for everybody. Not everybody has off road parking. Those of us that do, we're lucky we could get a charger fitted. In Kate's situation, she has got off road parking, but she actually rents the property. So why should she spend that money on the charger being fitted when if she moves, her landlord has got a charger? I think in this situation, Kate needs to speak to the landlord, needs to try and persuade him that, it's in his benefit as well as hers to have that charger fitted because when she moves out, the charge is still there for the next person, which makes it more attractive for people to rent. So yes, there is an issue with charging still. People not having off-road parking. It is getting better in terms of public charging, but if you don't have a driveway to charge, then it doesn't matter how good the charging network is, you can't actually use it.
And every day it improves. But there are some really fundamental things that we have to start getting right. Pre-authorization makes it incredibly difficult for anybody who's in a low-income household or even those on a decent income to access charging. I myself was stung by this twice in the last week by two different operators wanting a £45 and a £55 pre-auth, but not refunding it straight away, meaning that the funds that then weren't available to me when the charge point failed because it was unreliable. And I didn't have the funds back in my bank account to go and try another charger. Just small little things like that. If we could now apply the attention to detail to deliver a better service, I just feel like that range anxiety, the charging anxiety would just disappear
So
completely.
in this point, Kate is again correct. There are issues with chargers that take an upfront payment to validate that you can afford to charge your car. So they might take £60 out of your bank and they will hold it. Once you've finished charging, they will credit back anything that you haven't used. Unfortunately, this can take several days for it to happen. And this has happened to me personally. I've gone to use a charger at one of the local charging stations because it was the cheapest. But for some reason, it just wouldn't start the charge on my car, whether it's compatibility with the charger and the car, whether it was something to do with the application that I was using wasn't working, or maybe it was because there was a signal problem and it didn't know where I was. I don't know the issues, but all I know is I tried about 3 different cards and 5 different attempts. Each time it took out a minimum payment of about £35. And it took several days for that money to reappear in my bank once it had realised I actually hadn't charged. So you can get around this by using charge cards or applications. It's not as easy as just tapping it with your bank card, but it does get away from that issue of having to pay up front because the charge card have already validated your account. So they will take the payment and then they will deduct it directly from your bank account. Having said this same thing happens with petrol cars. If you go to Tesco's, then when you go to use the pay at pump, it will take and hold a certain amount of money. It depends on the supermarket, but it could be as much as £100. That may be returned immediately, or it may be returned within several working days. If you rely on that money, which let's face it, most of us probably would, then it could put you in further trouble financially because you don't have that money when you actually need it. So there are changes needed to this. Now, this is an issue with the banking system, and it's the banks that actually hold the money, not the charging companies. The government needs to look at this, and in today's modern age of fast technology, there's no reason why they shouldn't be refunding that money pretty much instantly, at least within an hour.
Would you also agree that the next step is to get the charging network to a point where wherever you are in the country, you don't have to worry about where your next charge is going to come from?
Absolutely. I think we're talking today about charging anxiety because range anxiety, worrying about that you're going to get to your destination with your electric car is a thing of the past, I would say. And in terms of addressing charging anxiety, yes, this is what we really need to address now. And as Kate mentioned, there are so many different aspects that need to be addressed. But I think everyone here is fully aware of what it is that needs to be addressed, are working to address that. If I take the example of Freightier with eVive, they're working with Uncharge. The drivers, when you're at their public charge point, like Kate, you have to charge in public. If you're there and anything goes wrong, you can give the feedback. You could send the images. You could be their eyes and ears on the ground. And this is literally something that really helps them to then improve their
Okay, so
services.
as Danita says, this is possibly one of the best things that we could do is have a public powered system that feeds back into a central system in real time where chargers are they working, how much are there any faults with them, what's the queue like. This is what we need, and we need it accessible pretty much in real time. So if I'm driving down the motorway and I'm looking at my battery level, I'm thinking, yeah, I've got about 60 miles left. Services are in 10 miles or 40 miles. Which one do I stop at? If my navigation says that the next services as fairly free with charges, but the next one after that is pretty busy, then I'm going to make the decision to charge early because I don't want to get to the next one and then I have to sit in a queue waiting to charge. So this real-time information, this real-time data is invaluable. And once it gets filtered into the likes of Google Maps and Apple Play, then and Apple Maps, then it really does make driving an EV so much easier because we know where the issues are, we know which chargers are not working, and that means that companies such as Fred's can actually go and fix the chargers. Tesla do this already themselves. They monitor their chargers 24/7, and if a charger starts to play up or doesn't work, they can remotely reboot it. Good old-fashioned IT saying, if it's not working, turn it off, turn it back on again, call me tomorrow. I spent many years in IT. If that charger then still doesn't start to work, they can escalate it to an engineer who can usually attend the same day. But it does reduce the amount of time that chargers are out of action for.
I think you also got to consider as well that the actual range that people are actually driving day to day is not actually as much as what people think. The most recent LT data, things like that. Most people only drive about 20 miles a day. So if you're looking at that and you're living in an EV, most EVs now that drive in or have a range of around 250, 300 miles, you only need to really charge up once every week, once every 2 weeks. So you can quite easily, a lot of the time, fit that in with your local shopping. You stop off for a coffee. Or if you don't have that access at your homes, which is also it can be a big barrier for people as well. So I think there's a lot of educational pieces that need to come into it as
Okay,
well.
so again, what Craig says is quite true. People ask me all the time, how many miles can you get out of your EV? Well, it depends on the time of year. That's not really an answer that they're looking for. But during the summer, my EV will probably do about 200 miles around the town, local urban work, maybe about 180, 185 if I'm tanking it up the motorway at national speed limits. However, during the winter, that distance will drop. During the winter we've just had, it averaging about 160 to 170 miles instead of the 200. And that is purely because of the way batteries operate in the cold. They're not as efficient, so therefore they use more energy to do the same amount of work. So when I tell people my car does 200 miles, the answer is normally, is that it? Well, yeah, I really don't do much more than 20 miles a week, 30 miles a week sometimes. If I'm going on a long journey, yeah, 200 miles is fine. My bladder normally needs to have a service stop before the car does, so I take that opportunity to plug in, give it a boost whilst I go and use the facilities. People focus on the ranges of vehicles, so ask yourself this, how often have you actually ever driven like 300 miles in a single trip and not stopped? I'll wait for your answer, but I'm going to guess that it's probably none. We should be taking breaks. We should be taking rest breaks every 2 hours when we're driving on the motorways. It's a better way to drive. It's a safer way to drive. It stops your legs getting tired. It gets your brain stimulated. It's just a good thing to get into the habit of doing, is stopping every 2 hours. Driving 300 and plus miles in a single trip is not healthy for us. And our cars, well, yeah, they might be able to do it, but it's probably not the best thing to do. So people are focusing on the range of the vehicles, which is the maximum that they can do. If we're traveling short distances every day, then why does that 200 miles even come into it? As long as I've got enough to get me around for, a couple of days, I wouldn't mind having to recharge once a week. I don't. I do probably fortnightly. But a week wouldn't be a big problem if all I do is local travel around the town. People need to just rethink the way that they consider range. It's not about the maximum range. Maximum range is brilliant, but maximum range comes with a cost. It's a heavier, bigger car.
I just wanted to say, we're all sat on this panel. We've all been able to walk up on stage. There's a huge user group that we're not actually addressing right now. So yes, we can use a charger that's attached to a lamppost or go to any car park and then probably, slip between a very narrow space between two parked vehicles. But the disabled community are not being factored in so much when it comes to the delivery of EV charging infrastructure. However, what we are now seeing is the impact of PAS 1899, which came in a couple of years back. The sites that were being planned at that point are now being delivered. So we're seeing this come through in a much more positive way. But for us, certainly from a charge safe perspective, there's about 40,000 of the 75,000 plus chargers out there who are definitely not PAS compliant, completely inaccessible to this community, and therefore they are the ones that are in danger of being left
Okay,
behind.
again, what Kate stated there, if anybody has got small children or has had small children, you'll totally appreciate that you need wider parking bays, especially if you have a disability or you've got a small child or you drive a vehicle with big doors. You need that extra room so you can actually get out of your vehicle without having to shuffle up and squeeze by the side of them. Be able to move a charging cable without fear of hitting your car or somebody else's, and then be able to charge it up. A lot of EV charging bays don't actually have this at the moment, which can make it feel quite compact when you are trying to charge. So having those wider bays actually helps everybody, able-bodied and not, those with kids, those without kids. It really does help us. Now, one thing that I have noticed is on a lot of the motorway service stations, the EV chargers is as far away from the services themselves, as in the restaurants and the toilet facilities, than you can get. You end up having to get an Uber almost from the charging bay to the actual front of the services. Why are they so far away? I tested this theory a couple of weeks ago with my trip to Silverstone. On the way back, I stopped off at Rugby Services, and the chargers are not too far away from the services themselves, but they're not right outside. I plugged in, walked across the car park, went to the toilet facilities, went and paid for some lunch. While I'm waiting for it to be given to me, my car pinged up to say that it had reached the amount of charging that I needed to get home with. I hadn't even paid for my lunch. But that distance across the car park wasn't huge, but it also wasn't close. If you consider that a lot of people with disabilities are being pushed into the EV market by mobility, then why should they be forced to walk the furthest across the car park to go and use the restrooms? What we end up doing is charging, sitting in the vehicle whilst it's charging, then drive closer to the services and then go and use the facilities. So we're actually at the service stations for longer than we need to because we're having to wait for it to charge. If they move them forward, so it's closer to the services, everybody who charges is better off, disabled or not. So please, if you are building charging areas at services, please put in the bump stops to stop people from reversing into them. It's so much easier if you've got a bump stop away from it so you can feel it and you know you're close enough. Yes, we've got parking sensors, but they don't always pick it up. And having a bump there just is an extra layer of protection, and it protects the service charger so it doesn't get damaged and put out of commission. Another thing they need to look at is the weight of the cables. Now, they carry coolant to keep the chargers cool whilst they're charging, otherwise they would overheat and probably ignite. The fluid that they're carrying needs to go through thicker pipes. So as we get faster chargers, the cables themselves get bigger, bulkier, and harder to maneuver. Again, put yourself in the shoes of somebody who may be elderly or have a disability that actually stops them from easily using it. They're being pushed into the EV market by the likes of mobility. So they have to have an EV, but they can't physically manage to move the cable and plug it in. The final little bit I want to raise on EV chargers at services is please put a canopy and lighting over them. I cannot recall ever going to a petrol station forecourt that did not have a canopy on it and did not have suitable lighting, even in the darkest days. Yet EV chargers are normally out of the way, no lighting, and open to all the elements. I've got to plug it in. Yes, it's quicker than filling up, but I'm still going to get wet. Please put a canopy over them. Again, it's for the benefit of everybody. So I hope this video was of use to you. It was an interesting debate to listen to. There's lots of good stuff coming out that is going to make EV charging more accessible to people, which will hopefully decrease this charging anxiety that people have got. If chargers are more reliable, they're more often on services, they're faster, you get real-time update as to what's working and what's not working, where there's queues, where there's not queues. It makes all the driving that we do so much more bearable and enjoyable. And with today's modern technology, there's no reason why this can't be achieved. It really can't. It just takes few of the companies, few of the charging stations, the suppliers, manufacturers to get together and discuss how are we going to do this for the benefit of everybody and to promote EVs, not go off in little silos doing their own little thing, which might come to nothing. One app, 2 apps, 3 apps, 4 apps, however many you've got, you know what I mean. So anyway, thanks very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. It costs you nothing. It's completely free to you, but it really helps me grow the channel. And it also means that you don't miss out on any further updates and other videos that I'm going to release. In the comments below, if you'd like to leave me a comment about your range anxiety or charging anxiety, do you have it? If you don't have it, how did you get rid of it? Let's make this a community event. Let's try and help each other. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.